Good evening. The world is watching the Caribbean with bated breath tonight. On December 17, 2025, President Donald Trump announced a total blockade of Venezuela, aiming to seal off the nation from the sea and choke its vital oil exports. The announcement, made via Truth Social, declared Venezuela completely surrounded by the largest armada ever assembled in the history of South America. This move signals a dramatic escalation in U.S.-Venezuela tensions, shifting from sanctions to direct military enforcement. The blockade targets all oil tankers entering or leaving Venezuelan ports, threatening the country's economic lifeline. The suddenness of the action stunned the world, following the U.S. designation of Maduro's government as a foreign terrorist organization and the recent seizure of a major Venezuelan oil tanker. The implications are immense, a high-stakes gamble that could force regime change or plunge the region into deeper instability. By cutting off oil revenue, the U.S. hopes to starve Maduro's government of resources, but this also risks a severe humanitarian crisis for millions of Venezuelans already facing shortages of food, medicine, and basic necessities. The world now waits to see how this unprecedented naval standoff will unfold. The blockade is not just a diplomatic gesture, it's a physical act of containment. International law, humanitarian concerns, and the potential for conflict are all in play. The next moves by Washington and Caracas could reshape the future of the region. A blockade is an act of war, using military force to cut off a nation's trade and communication. The U.S. is now using this powerful tool to cripple Venezuela's economy by targeting its oil exports. Blockades are rare and serious, historically reserved for open conflict. By stopping oil tankers, the U.S. aims to choke off the Maduro government's main source of income. The legality of such a move is hotly debated. Venezuela has already filed a complaint with the United Nations, calling the blockade an illegal act of aggression. For ordinary Venezuelans, the effects will be devastating. Shortages of food, medicine, and fuel will worsen. Prices will skyrocket, and daily life will become even more difficult. Even if aimed at the government, blockades inevitably punish the entire population. The world will closely scrutinize the legitimacy and effectiveness of this blockade in the coming weeks. The humanitarian impact could be catastrophic. The blockade is not just a strategic move, it's a siege with real human costs. U.S.-Venezuela relations have long revolved around oil. Once close partners, the relationship soured after Hugo Chavez nationalized American oil assets in the 2000s. Billions of dollars in legal disputes and deep resentment followed, poisoning ties for decades. Maduro continued Chavez's anti-U.S. stance, and as Venezuela's economy collapsed, the U.S. ramped up sanctions and backed opposition leader Juan Guaidó. The current blockade is the culmination of years of escalating hostility. Trump's demand for Venezuela to return all oil, land, and other assets refers directly to the nationalizations under Chavez. This is not just about current politics, it's about settling a decades-old score. The blockade is the most aggressive U.S. move yet, using military and economic power to force change. The conflict is rooted in oil, ideology, and a bitter history of economic disputes. Trump's blockade announcement was bold and direct, delivered on Truth Social. He claimed Venezuela was surrounded by the largest armada in South American history, projecting overwhelming force. The U.S. demands Venezuela return expropriated American oil assets, framing the blockade as economic justice. This is more than sanctions, it's a military enforcement action on an unprecedented scale. U.S. Southern Command has massively increased its naval presence, with 15% of U.S. naval forces now in the region. The buildup, initially under the guise of counter-narcotics, is now clearly aimed at enforcing the blockade. By bypassing traditional diplomacy, Trump forced an immediate global reaction. The combination of powerful rhetoric, clear demands, and visible military might leaves no doubt about U.S. seriousness. The Maduro regime faces intense pressure with few options for response. The world is watching to see if this show of force will achieve its aims, or spark a wider crisis. Caracas responded with fury and defiance. Maduro condemned the blockade as an act of warmongering and American imperialism, rallying Venezuelans to defend their sovereignty. Venezuela immediately filed a formal complaint with the UN Security Council, accusing the U.S. of violating international law. The government painted itself as a victim of relentless U.S. aggression, seeking to win sympathy at home and abroad. Officials argued that sanctions had failed, and now the U.S. was resorting to reckless military pressure. The humanitarian impact, they warned, would be devastating for ordinary Venezuelans. Despite the rhetoric, Venezuela has few options for direct retaliation. Military action against the U.S. Navy would be suicidal. Attacking remaining U.S. oil interests would likely hurt Venezuela more than the U.S. Maduro's strategy is defiant resistance, international diplomacy, and rallying nationalist support. He's betting on outlasting U.S. pressure and hoping for international pushback. The standoff is now as much about global perception as it is about military might. The blockade strikes at Venezuela's economic heart oil. Oil exports make up nearly 90% of Venezuela's revenue, funding everything from imports to the military. With most Western buyers gone, China is now Venezuela's main customer. The U.S. Navy is positioned to disrupt these vital shipping lanes, making oil exports nearly impossible. Tankers now risk interception and seizure. Few will dare to make the journey. Without oil revenue, Venezuela's ability to import food, medicine, and essentials will collapse. Shortages will worsen, prices will soar, and the economy will spiral further. Oil production itself is threatened. With storage full, wells may be shut down, causing long-term damage. The blockade could cripple Venezuela's oil industry for years. The economic domino effect will be felt in every Venezuelan household. The blockade's harshest impact will fall on Venezuela's 28 million people. Already facing a humanitarian crisis, millions struggle for food and healthcare. Cutting off oil revenue means even fewer imports of essentials. Food shortages will deepen, prices will skyrocket, and malnutrition will rise. Hospitals already lacking supplies will see medicine and equipment dwindle further. Chronic illness and emergency care will become even more dire. Fuel shortages could paralyze transportation and worsen power outages. Job losses and business closures will increase, driving more people to flee. The blockade, meant to pressure leaders, is a siege punishing an entire population. Aid groups warn of famine and catastrophe on a scale unseen in the Americas. The blockade has split the international community. China, Russia, and Cuba condemn it as illegal aggression. China, Venezuela's main oil buyer, calls for dialogue. U.S. allies are divided. Some praise the move, others warn of humanitarian disaster. In the U.S., the blockade is polarizing. Supporters hail it as decisive, critics fear conflict and suffering. Venezuela's UN complaint puts the crisis at the center of global diplomacy, but U.S. veto power limits UN action. The UN Secretary General urges restraint, but options are few. Latin American countries are cautious, many oppose Maduro, but fear U.S. military intervention. Border nations like Brazil and Colombia face refugee pressures and regional instability. The blockade forces countries to take sides, deepening divisions across the Americas. The world is watching, but solutions remain elusive. As U.S. warships tighten their grip, the world wonders what's next. One scenario: the blockade works, collapsing Maduro's regime as economic pressure breaks elite loyalty. Another: military escalation. An incident at sea could spiral into wider conflict, with devastating consequences. Maduro might provoke a clash to rally support and paint himself as a victim. Or, the blockade could drag on, creating a grinding stalemate and deepening humanitarian catastrophe. Millions could suffer as the world faces a growing refugee crisis and moral dilemma. The future of Venezuela hangs in the balance. The blockade has pushed a long, simmering crisis to the brink. The coming days will be critical. Will diplomacy prevail, or will the region slide toward conflict? As of tonight, there are more questions than answers. The fate of millions rests on decisions made in Washington and Caracas. The world watches and waits.